Nicolle Smith, and I am working on assignment 3 for cognitive coaching for AEL 522. And we are in a 5th grade reading language arts classroom, and this is the teacher, Shelby Boswell.
I'm currently a student teacher at Jacksonville University.
And first off, let me just tell you a little bit about what cognitive coaching is. It's kind of a collaborative model that is supposed to be non-judgmental and only provides support for individuals in becoming more self-directed, and it also encourages some reflective practice. So its purpose is to look at, reflecting on you more so than on the students, and focusing on one's own thinking and perceptions and beliefs to see how this affects your teaching practices. So really we're just looking at best teaching practices for you. And I'm just here to kind of offer any kind of support, anything that you want me to look at. I'll be glad to monitor that for you. There's 3 basic components or steps in the cycle of cognitive coaching. And right now we're kind of in the planning conference. And then there is a non-evaluative classroom observation where I'm really just kind of looking at whatever data you want me to collect. And then at the end there will be a reflecting. So the only thing that we'll be videoing is the planning and the reflecting conference. Tell me about your lesson that you're planning for tomorrow.
Well, it's based around main idea and supporting details. The plan is to go back over it to do a review because I noticed that was an area of weakness with the students. And so we're just going to do a verbal questioning beforehand just to assess their prior knowledge of main idea, and then kind of move into a teacher-guided section where I would show them an example and then kind of do it with them, answer the questions, show them how to pick details out, good supporting details, and then use the cards. I've created some cards to use for the lesson that would allow the students to get in groups and kind of work on their own to practice what I've modeled. So that's the basic gist of it.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want to re-examine main idea. You've covered main idea before?
Yes, it's been covered before. So this would just be like coming back to it.
Okay, just as a review.
Yes.
So your objectives for the lesson are?
It would be for the students to be able to identify the main idea consistently, because as of now it's become it's somewhat of an issue for most of the students, majority of the students. There's only a handful in each section that seem to really grasp it.
Okay, so your objectives are going to be to look for that the comprehension. So what will be some success indicators? How will you know that the students are understanding the main idea and finding details and things like that?
Well, what I would like for them to do is use the cards and to go through. There's a couple questions on the back of each one that ask for supporting details, that ask for the main idea in their own words and then the supporting details. So they will have those written down, and then hopefully through verbal question I would be able to assess how much they actually are getting from the text.
So you're going to use observation, just informal observation, and then verbal questioning?
Yes.
Okay. Will they be writing anything down?
They would be writing the questions. I'm not going to make them actually write the questions just to answer it. I would like them to do at least 3 passages. There are several different ones, and so I'd like them to do at least 3 and have them write down questions 1 and 2.
Okay.
So, provide the details.
Sounds like fun. Okay, so what are, I guess, some of the strategies that you'll be using?
Well, small group, because I'm going to do them in groups of 3, because I found that usually in partners they become dependent on one person to be the dominant person doing the work.
Yeah, that's
true. With 3 it kind of evens out the workload, and also it gives them more of a chance to look at different stories, different texts, because each of them are leveled, so there's higher level and lower level reading text, so it would be able to give them a chance to work outside of their realm of reading.
Okay. Those are some good strategies. Like the differentiation and individualized instruction. It's really good. I can't wait to see it. So, let's see. Is there anything, I mentioned earlier that, I'm not just here to observe the students, that I'm here for whatever you need. So is there anything that you would like for me to look at, like for like your personal goals?
My personal goals, I know that my weakest area would be time management.
Okay.
Just because getting used to a time crunch or to a time span and adjusting from different grades has been a little bit harder for me because I'm used to lower grades or separated classrooms, resource rooms. So time management is a little bit harder for me. So that would be something personally that I would like to improve on.
So you're saying that you want me to just kind of document, like take a note or something of how long?
I would like to keep it between 25 and 30 minutes.
Okay. Is that for your just the activity, or is that your instruction with the activity?
Hopefully that would be with both, because
Okay.
I would like to keep my instruction, since this is just a remedial
Okay.
lesson. I would like for my part to not be as long as it was when I first introduced it, so this would be more for the students, although I'd still like to model it first just to make sure.
Okay, that sounds good. So a total of about 25, 30 minutes tomorrow, around 9:30 to 11, we said. Okay. And is anything else? I've got, time management to look at. Is there anything that you want me to look at, like with the students?
I would like comprehension comprehension monitoring.
Yes.
If I can get it out.
No, that's fine.
that's usually something that you don't get the experience of doing when there's not two teachers in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's always helpful anytime there's another educator in the room, is to have someone actually monitor, because sometimes you don't catch certain things that you would if you had someone else.
So you want me to do just kind of an informal observation, seeing like how many students are getting, maybe you said about you were going to have them read maybe 3 passages, so if they're getting like 2 out of 3, or
yes,
just kind of take note of those students.
There's actually a rubric for what they're expected to do.
Okay.
So that would be a way to assess, kind of see if they're getting towards their goals.
Okay. And on this rubric, it has for advanced, main ideas supported by 3 or more details, or if it's proficient, just 3 details. Partially proficient would be 2 details, and unsatisfactory would just be 1, or that it's not supported by details. Mm-hmm. So I'm really looking for kids who either have a lot of details or none at all.
Yes.
Okay, kind of in that mid-range.
Because you wouldn't have to get too in depth. You're just just to see if they're
right.
actually comprehending.
Right.
So I can go back to the ones that really need it the most.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. I think there's one more thing. You mentioned that this was remedial. Is there any reason specifically why you're focusing? If you've already taught main idea, is there any reason why you're specifically going back and refocusing on those main idea and details? You said that some students, can you kind of clarify that?
The STI assessment that showed that their scores were the lowest in main idea and supporting details.
Okay.
And then throughout, whenever we read a text over in the class as a whole group, we usually we'll talk about the text forms and main idea and inferences, several different aspects. And main idea just every time is just their struggle. That you can usually identify it, but the supporting details, it's just
they have a hard time.
It's a hard time
proving
what they know. So
okay.
we're gonna hopefully try to get past that little lump.
Okay. That sounds good. So just to clarify everything, I'm going to be in here between like 9:30 and 11, and you would like for me to look at kind of your time management. You want to keep everything, I guess, in 25, 30-minute range, since it's just a review, yes, including their activity, and the kids are going to be working in groups, you said?
Yes, groups of 3.
Okay.
And I would like to try to strategically pair them and have them, because usually I let them pick their own partners, but for this activity I think it would be better to try the groups of 3.
Okay, so just using like your best practices, yes, and everything, and differentiating and everything like that. And so get back on track for just a second. Time management, and then informally observing the students.
Yes.
Okay. So that way, hopefully by the end of it, whenever we come back and do our reflection after your lesson and everything, we can look at who struggled, who needs more support and everything like that. So I'm looking forward to kind of providing you with that information. Like you said, it's very nice to have that whenever you have more than one teacher in the classroom. You can whenever you're being pulled somewhere, I might be able to fill in somewhere else.
Yes.
So, oh, okay. Okay, so we're back after the lesson has been taught and after our pre-conference, and so now we're back for the post-conference. So I collected some data from your main idea lesson, and do you want to go over your data or the student data first?
Student data.
Okay, so with the student data that I collected, I just kind of made notes with all the students listed on it. And these that have like check marks beside them, they were really, really getting it. They were all working together very well. And like you had said, your initial objectives were to find the main idea and then to find 3 details and everything, supporting details that went along with it. So these students right here did a good job. There were a couple of people like these with the stars beside them. It seemed like some of them, kind of understood what was going on, but like this one right here, this Jacob, he was not being very specific with his details, and this one was too. Just, it might have been something about, I think it was the Bermuda Triangle, and how there are strange disappearances, but then they wouldn't be specific. They would say, well, people think it's weird. Mm-hmm. Like they weren't, going back like you said that you had wanted them to do and really digging in deep and finding maybe a specific sentence. But overall, out of a class of 28, these right here I noticed were just not being specific. This little girl right here was pretty rushed. I couldn't tell why. I don't know if she just wanted to finish, I don't know, before her partner did or what was going on there, but that one was rushed. And then this group right here, these girls, they were I could tell that they were very intelligent girls, very smart girls, but they were kind of hung up on the paraphrasing. They wanted to make sure that they had changed every single word instead of just taking it and, stating it. I saw in the initial beginning part of your lesson that you had, demonstrated you had modeled reading something and then flipping it over. So that way, they wouldn't look at it. They had to paraphrase their main idea. And the girls kept, peeking back and going, okay, how can we change this word? Like they found the main idea in the sentence as part of the paragraph, but they wanted to change every single little word. But overall, I feel, how do you feel about it? If it was successful and...
I feel like overall most of the students did relatively well. What I asked, they seemed to really grasp the paraphrasing. I did notice, not only with that group, but a couple others initially wanted to change every word. Mm-hmm. So they were wanting to get dictionaries and look up synonyms and antonyms, and I was like...
From your other classes?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I had to explain that you didn't have to take every word and change it over. So I think... and when I do this lesson again, that's probably one of the things that I would add is at the beginning. You don't have to change every word in the sentence.
Mm-hmm. Just being more
reinforce
explicit.
that a little bit better.
Yeah, more explicit with your directions. But when I was in here and I was looking at your things, you had some very good best practices that all teachers should have, and there was your content and your instruction was in line with those standards, and you had very explicit directions, and I could tell, I think those girls really wanted, to make sure they had everything perfect because you communicated high expectations with them, and so they wanted to make sure that they had the main idea, but maybe they were a little nervous about, their own capabilities, but you walked around the whole time, and one of the things that you had mentioned in our pre-conference that you were kind of concerned about was or something that you wanted to look at and maybe work on was your time management. Yes. But I noticed that you set a timer, that you had a timer set immediately for 20 minutes. So how do you feel about using that timer? Was that something that you just did for this lesson, or have you been trying to incorporate that more?
I've tried it some. The only thing with timers is that I feel like once it goes off, mm-hmm. Or if I give them a reminder, you've got about 3 minutes left, they're either just rushing to finish or they give up. Yeah. But I feel like it's unfair to not warn them before time is up also. So I'm trying to figure out a happy medium with that, with them still working until the end of the time.
So you're saying that you do want to work on that timing, but at the same time you don't want to limit them. Well, one thing that I saw, whenever the timer did go off, though, you stopped it, but then you still told them, okay, I'm going to give you a minute or two to finish your thought. So that was really good. That way they weren't rushing, or they weren't just like, oh, it's over. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was something really interesting, that you were you wanted me to monitor it, but then you also dug in and self-monitored for yourself. So that was just really interesting. All of your differentiation was really good. You had the groups levelized and, helped them. I noticed that it looked like the passages were also, some passages were more difficult than others, or a little bit more interesting than others, and you seemed to kind of match that as you were passing out their passages. You seemed to match that to the students very well, knowing your students. And it was an old skill that was reviewed, but in a new light with that paraphrasing that was in there. These are just some notes that I had taken. At one point in time, whenever you were communicating expectations and directions, I saw that you clarified that proper nouns cannot be paraphrased to the whole group, because they were looking at trying to paraphrase the Bermuda Triangle.
That was interesting. I had not anticipated that. So that was...
Yeah, but whenever you stopped it and you told everybody, I mean, they all seemed to, they all listened and clued into, what you're saying, and thought, okay, well, I won't try to do that. And you redirected individually. I heard you say at one point in time, a group that was just sitting there, and you said, well, remember what is the main idea? And once you said that, it just jogged their memory of what they were supposed to be doing. Yeah, and then I wrote down about that timer, that the timer went off, but you didn't stop abruptly. You still gave opportunities for them to finish their final thoughts. So those are just, a couple of things that I saw. How do you think the lesson went?
Well, for the most part, I feel like it went relatively well. The students seemed more interested in the reading material than usual reading material.
And you had chosen that.
Yes.
For a high level of interest. Because they were all about... unsolved mysteries around the world, so it was very interesting.
They seemed to, and I made sure the girls, the group of girly girls, got to do the Atlantis one, because I knew that they would really appreciate doing that one. They seemed uninterested. I think the one thing with the lesson that I would try to redo is some groupings I let friends get together. Mm-hmm. That I think the next time I would do it, I would be more careful, because that seemed to be a hindrance in some areas.
You're saying that sometimes working with your friend or letting them work with their friend doesn't work out, maybe for a remedial session?
Yes. I mean, if it's something, a quick skill, not involving a new skill, if it was just a quick complete review, mm-hmm. that maybe it would be fine. But for the paraphrasing aspect, I thought there was a little bit of goofing off going on and not paying attention. But for the most part, I feel like most of them really got it.
Do you feel like whenever there was goofing off, as you said, or maybe acting silly or something like that, how did you redirect? What did you do whenever you stepped in?
Well, I would just ask individually instead of saying, okay, guys, y'all tell me this. I would pick a member of the group out and say, okay, well, will you tell me this? Which made the other ones think, oh, and they look and make sure I know what I'm talking about before she asks me.
Okay.
So that was
kind of catching them in that. Okay. Let's see. Tell me about the amount of comprehension, or the level of comprehension that you saw among the groups after your initial instruction.
Now, there were some groups that had written out full sentences, lovely, and extremely detailed. And then there were some that wrote the bare minimum of what I asked, and then there were some that were giving very vague responses. But I think overall, I at least had what the majority of the class at least did the bare minimum of what I asked. So I believe that the comprehension level was there. I haven't seen a single paper where the main idea was off, or not. If it was paraphrased, it may have been in a way that was very shortened, but it wasn't wrong. The answer wasn't wrong. It may not have been exactly what I was looking for, but it was correct. And the details straight from the text, they actually did a lot better on that than they have been doing with pulling from the text. So I was
That's great.
happy with that.
That's great. Good. What do you think could be some factors that we can analyze that may have contributed to that learning success? What all do you think went into playing a part of making the kids successful with this activity?
I think that the reading material was a big
Determinant,
factor, yes,
yeah.
because it wasn't a lot either. It was interesting material, interesting subjects, but also the paragraphs were shortened. So I think that when I first looked at it, even if it was interesting, even if a paragraph is interesting, if it's small print and it's on a plain piece of paper, they're going to look at it and not even already go, oh no, more reading. So the fact that it was on colored paper and the fact that they were shortened and the font was larger, I think that helped them to feel like, okay, this isn't very much at all that I have to look at. And the fact that they got to work in groups, I think, instead of just partners, they were excited by the ability to have, like, a designated detail person. Because I notice a lot of times they'll get hung up on when there's partners and there's 3 tasks, someone doing all the work and someone not doing it. I think with 3, it evens out the responsibility because the one person that usually does the work is not willing to do the work for all 3. So I feel like that actually helps with them a lot.
All right. Kids are the same way as adults. Okay, so what if the reading material and the colored paper, if those were, you think, the big success indicators, what do you think were some indications that the students were struggling? You had mentioned some students were going above and beyond, some were giving you your bare minimum, and then others were very vague. Is there any factors that you can analyze that might, have caused them to be vague, or was it just student apathy? I mean, what do you think was going on?
I think that part of it, with a couple groups, was the grouping of friends that they were more concerned with socializing than the assignment, which happens, especially at this age grade, is something that you have to be aware about. But I think that probably some of the issue, or the majority of the issue, was in the paraphrasing aspect because of the need to be extremely precise. And I think maybe telling them about the laws, how it's against the law to steal someone else's work, and they have to be very careful with paraphrasing, that they can get in trouble in high school, that they can even get kicked out of college. I think all of that made some of the overachieving students, like the group of girls that were really concerned, I think it kind of made them become too hung up on the technical aspects to really dig in as deep as they would have. So I think that was probably an issue for the kids that have the need to impress, that highly impress.
Okay. What do you think, we talked about student learning, what do you think you're learning about yourself as a teacher?
I think my wording, because sometimes I word things tricky, I guess, or a word will leave me, so I try to describe it. I think sometimes I get off on the trying to find a word, and then I'm just kind of, I get off on rabbit trails maybe a little bit, just a little, and like I said, the time management is still something that I want to kind of work on, because I know that it is, I'm still not at my happiest medium yet of giving enough time and getting through everything.
So one goal that you have that you're continuing to work on is your time management and, like you said, the wording. Do you think that's just because this is brand new, that you haven't been doing this for years and years and years? I mean, do you have any insight on?
I think part of it would be lack of experience as far as the subject matter goes. I'm used to younger grades as well, so it's not as in-depth with things. So sometimes I'll get asked a question, or I'll be explaining something, and they're missing it, and then I'm not sure if I'm too far below them or if I'm talking above them, because I'm used to the younger grades. So I don't want to insult them with over explaining something. But I also I'm used to either adults in education or very young children. So it's trying to like locate between the two for
balance, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, balance. Well, in terms of craftsmanship, do you have any ideas to continue applying the skills that you just mentioned? Like you mentioned, finding that balance. How do you think you'll do that?
I think experience, definitely. I think that the longer throughout the internship that it goes, because I've already noticed improvement in several areas that I had once feared, I guess, with older grades. So experience helps out, and also practice. I think practicing because when I practice speaking, you can't practice all the dialogue because you don't know what students will say or how they will react. But just thinking it over, even asking. I work at after school care, so asking the 5th grade questions or asking the older students questions that I usually work with the younger ones, but asking the older ones some questions to kind of get a feel for how appropriate it is, if it's if I'm over their heads or under their heads, and try to judge it with that.
Based off of that, that's good. You had mentioned something earlier that you would modify or vary for the next time that you teach. You had thought about the grouping, like with partners. Is there anything else that you could think of that, and I know that you practiced it, you did it 3 times, but if you were, here next year, if you did this same lesson a year from now, or if you even think that you need to go back and review a month from now, what do you think you would do?
I think that I would have a pre-made sheet, maybe not print them off, still let them do it on their own paper, but with the directions like on the piece of paper, because drawing it on the board seemed to, for some reason, the information I want on their paper, cause some students to just space out on it. I think maybe if it was on paper, they would follow the format a little better. And I think, like you said, with the group, or like I mentioned earlier, with the groups, I would not let friends pair up. I mean, maybe if they can handle it, because you know your students, you know who can handle it. And
you had several. From what I saw out of these 28, you had several that worked just fine. And maybe that even letting them be with a friend, with a partner, maybe even increase their motivation.
Some of them I noticed, because when we talked about asking, we will separate you, I noticed that some of them were like, said, hey, be quiet. She said,
do your work.
Yeah, she said, we'll get in trouble. We're supposed to do 3. So, I know it helps some of them. I think, which with young boys, because it's mostly boy trouble, but with young boys, I know that it's so hard. Like, you can just see the energy, like, coursing, and you can tell they're just at any second ready to just jump up and run. So, that's something that's just, it's the fact of the age group. So I guess maybe I would maybe do some like desk exercise, maybe possibly beforehand, give them a chance to stretch it out, and maybe release some of the energy so that it's not as crazy.
I like that term, desk exercise. That's good. So being more explicit maybe with instructions.
Yes.
Actually having a sheet could potentially increase the effectiveness of your lesson, and then also that grouping. Yeah. You don't want to, I can't think of the word, not really punish, but you don't want to.
I don't want to restrict the kids that can do it.
Yeah.
So,
that can handle it and everything. Okay, well, it looks like out of everything, in the future, you still want to continue looking at that time management and applying that. And really, whenever you set that timer, you set the timer, but you didn't let the timer limit yourself or the students. Because you set it, I'm assuming you set it for 20 minutes, so you were setting it kind of low.
Yes.
Anyway, that wasn't your maximum time, because I think yesterday when we spoke, you were going to do, wasn't it 25 to 30?
Yes.
For the whole activity. So you even limited yourself, but you still allowed that extra time at the end. You still gave yourself leeway. So I think that you were very conscious of what you wanted to do and your goal, and you made sure to apply that. So looking at the frequency of how often you use a timer, that might be something, that really works out for you.
I think that is definitely something that I will be trying to do more often.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you doing this with me and everything. So, do you have any questions or anything else?
I think that I'm fine.
We're good. All right. Thanks.